Tonight,
Ready, stop.
high honor.
May she rest in peace.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg is the first woman and first person of the Jewish faith to lie in state in the capital of the United States. And
we want to make sure the election is honest, and I'm not sure that it can be. I don't know that it can be.
weighing the stakes.
The ballots, that's a whole big scam.
As the president casts doubt on the election process.
By mounting that kind of fraud at scale would be a major challenge for an adversary.
The director of the FBI gives Congress the Bureau's assessment. This as more protests erupt in American cities in the wake of charges around the death of Breonna Taylor. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Election frenzy hits a fever pitch with less than 2 months to the vote and 4 days until the first presidential debate. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jesse.
And I'm Jenna Bratter. Thanks for joining us. Well, President Trump is racking up the frequent flyer miles on the campaign trail, making stops today in Florida and Georgia.
And with just 39 days until Americans head to the polls, tonight, Mr. Trump's still raising questions about the fairness of the upcoming election.
CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us with his remarks today in Florida. Ben?
Jenna, John, the FBI director says there is no evidence of coordinated voter fraud. This as President Trump prepares to face former Vice President Joe Biden in the very first presidential debate on Tuesday.
So I'm thrilled to be back at Doral.
President Trump back in the Sunshine State, this time for a Latinos for Trump roundtable in Doral.
We built the greatest economy in history, and now we're doing it again. In the past 4 months, we added 3.3 million Hispanic American jobs. That's a record also.
In about 24 hours, President Trump will be back in D.C. to announce his nominee for the Supreme Court.
I'm confident he's going to make an outstanding nomination.
This as the Justice Department investigates 9 discarded mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania that had been improperly opened, a violation as no ballots can be opened until Election Day.
We want to make sure the election is honest, and I'm not sure that it can be. I don't know that it can be. We have to be very careful with the ballots. The ballots, that's a whole big scam.
Right now, 5 states conduct elections entirely by mail-in prior to the pandemic with no cases or no major cases of fraud. Does that success not give the president confidence in mail-in voting?
So those states have had time and a history of doing having a workable system, and one that has been done for many years, for many election cycles, to move the entire country to mass mail-in voting all at once and have an entirely new system, and do that in just a few short months is an untenable and an unworkable proposition, and one that has shown to not work well at all.
Trump continues to tout fears about widespread mail-in voting fraud, but the FBI hasn't seen any evidence of that.
We have not seen, historically, any kind of coordinated national voter fraud effort in a major election, whether it's by mail or otherwise.
And aside from mail-in ballots, this week the White House also promoted President Trump's America First health care plan. In it, he plans to sign an executive order to protect pre-existing conditions and also find ways to prevent surprise medical billing. John, Jenna?
All right, CBN's Ben Kennedy. Thanks, Ben. Well, today's somber Capitol Hill ceremony for the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg brings days of official mourning here in Washington to a close.
Yeah, the memorial service paid homage to Ginsburg's life and her decades on the bench. CBN senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergener has more on how she was remembered at today's historic tribute.
It took 168 years, but today Ruth Bader Ginsburg became the first woman and the first Jewish American to lie in state at the U.S. Capitol.
Ready, step.
As her casket made the short procession from the Supreme Court steps to the east front of the Capitol, a military honor guard carries it into the Capitol Statuary Hall.
Forward, march.
An extraordinary end to an extraordinary life. Thousands have paid their respects since Ginsburg died from cancer a week ago at age 87. This morning, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi opened the private service.
It is with profound sorrow and deep sympathy to the Ginsburg family that I have the high honor to welcome Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg to lie in state in the Capitol of the United States. She does so on a catafalque built for Abraham Lincoln. May she rest in peace.
Ginsburg was praised by Rabbi Lauren Holtzblatt for her resilience, persistence, and her quest for equality.
All the days of her life, she pursued justice, even in illness. She fought 5 bouts with cancer, and she supported her beloved Marty through his battle with cancer as well. Each time, she pressed forward.
Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden and running mate Kamala Harris also paid their respects. The solemn ceremony happening amid a firestorm of controversy over Ginsburg's replacement on the high court. Despite Democratic calls to wait until after the election, President Trump is expected to announce a conservative nominee to replace the liberal icon on Saturday.
With little they can do to stop the process, Democrats are still trying to invoke Ginsburg's dying wish that a new president fill her vacancy on the court. Meanwhile, the Washington Post is reporting that the White House is already reaching out to senators to lay the groundwork for a quick confirmation.
All right, that was CBN's Tara Mergener. Thank you, Tara. We'll hear now for our Friday Faith Nation political panel, Julia Manchester, political reporter at The Hill, and CBN chief political analyst David Brody. Julia, David, always great to see you on Friday.
You too.
First question. So a new ABC News Washington Post poll shows 57% of Americans think the winner of the election should choose the next Supreme Court justice. Of course, President Trump is expected to announce his pick tomorrow evening. David, to you first. Is this a good or bad idea in light of this poll, or does it matter?
Well, Jenna, it doesn't matter. You know what? 75%, actually close to 80% of Americans want term limits, and you tell me how that's going. So forget about the polls. They don't mean a thing. I mean, what Americans want, what politicians do, don't necessarily always match. Sometimes they do, but in this case, it won't match because the president and Republicans are going to put this nominee forward. They'll probably have a vote in late October. And they're going to do this before the election day. And there's nothing Democrats can do to stop them unless they try and ruin the reputation of a Supreme Court nominee, which is what they're going to pretty much try and do.
We want to mention that you can watch the President's Supreme Court announcement tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern on the CBN News Channel.
David, Julia, today House Speaker Nancy Pelosi slammed the president over his declining to say whether he would support a peaceful transfer of power if he loses. Julia, talk a little bit about the double-edged sword for the president contesting the vote, considering that effect on down-ballot races where control of the Senate hangs in the balance and Republicans have 23 seats that they're trying to keep.
Right, and absolutely. In the Senate side, Republicans only need 3, or Democrats only need 3 or more, need to win 3 or more seats to win back a majority in that chamber. And you've already seen Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and other Senate Republicans really try to play cleanup on the president's response or remarks for that exact reason. They're trying to protect their majority and to protect their incumbents as well as their challengers who are running ahead of November. I think what you saw is President Trump continuing to play into this theory he has that there is widespread voter fraud, which we technically don't have widespread evidence for. So he's trying to essentially create a distraction right now, and you're seeing this really negatively impact Republicans and really giving a free pass to Democrats to really slam the president.
Julia, polls do show the race tightening in some key swing states like Florida and Arizona, with Trump faring slightly better than Joe Biden. What does this tell you?
Well, in Florida in particular, we've seen that Joe Biden has performed not poorly, but not as well as past Democrats with the Latino vote. And I think that is something that you're going to see Joe Biden really try to hone in on in that state in particular on that Latino vote. And you've seen he's getting outside help from Michael Bloomberg, for example, to really turn out the vote in that state. In Arizona, however, we've seen a mixture of polls showing Joe Biden actually doing much better with the Latino vote in that state and doing much better with than Donald Trump in some parts of that state. So I think you are seeing a mixture of polls right now. Overall, they are definitely tightening, but I think it's important we pay attention to key voting blocks like the Latino vote, the suburban woman vote, those kind of voting groups that will ultimately really determine the winner of the election in these key swing states.
David, final question here. The White House unveiled what's called the Platinum Plan, an effort to appeal to black voters by boosting investment in black businesses. Talk about the timing, whether overtures like this and the recent executive order on health care and the one that he announced to a Catholic group on pro-life measures. Talk about whether overtures like these really work in about a half minute that we have left.
Yeah, hard to say if they really work. I mean, look, I think the train has left the station with President Trump as it relates to evangelicals and the pro-life community. I mean, he's done so much for them anyhow. One more isn't really going to make too much of a difference. As for the black community, that might be a bit of a different story. I mean, you know, the Trump campaign won 9% of the African-American vote. They're trying to get to 13, 14%. It could hurt Joe Biden in some key swing states. So that could be instrumental. And by the way, speaking of this plan that you're talking about, the Platinum Plan, one of the things in there is that the KKK would be denounced, or excuse me, labeled as a terrorist group. That is part of the Platinum Plan, and that will throw the media into a bit of a tailspin.
All right, David Brody and Julia Manchester, we have to leave it there this Friday. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Well, tonight, emotional moments as the family of Breonna Taylor speaks out for the first time since the grand jury's decision not to charge anyone in her death.
That's right, and the family calling for the state attorney general to release the transcripts of what was shown to the Kentucky grand jury. CBN national security correspondent Eric Phillips joins us now with more. Eric?
Yeah, John, and why that's so important is in light of the grand jury's decision, the family wants to know what evidence was presented to the grand jury that may have led them to make this decision. Today, Breonna's aunt spoke, reading a statement from her grief-stricken mother.
I hope you never know the pain of your child being murdered 191 days in a row.
Gut-wrenching words coming from the mouth of Breonna's aunt, but from the heart of her mother, Tamika Palmer. The statement went on to say that Palmer never had faith that Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron would do the right thing, but she doesn't blame him alone.
The officer who told a lie to obtain a search warrant failed her. The judge who signed the search warrant failed her. The terrorist who broke down her door failed her. The system as a whole has failed her.
Say her name! Breonna Taylor! Say her name!
Wednesday, the grand jury charged former officer Brett Hankison with 3 counts of wanton endangerment in the first degree, not for killing Taylor in her home back in March, but for shooting into a neighbor's apartment. The family's attorney said they're bewildered and
demanding that he release the transcripts of the grand jury proceeding.
Pressure on the attorney general also coming from Kentucky's governor.
It's about trusting the people of Kentucky. I trust them, that if they have all the facts, the evidence, and maybe some explanation if needed, that they can process it.
The decision has led to protests in Louisville, where about 24 were arrested overnight. 2 officers shot in the process are now recovering, the alleged shooter in custody. In Los Angeles, 2 incidents involving vehicles Thursday. This truck slamming into a protester, and a chase after this white car drove through a crowd.
This is getting ugly really, really quick.
The car attacked once it was cut off. In Seattle, this video showed an officer pushing his bike over a protester's head. That officer now on leave.
To help curb violent incidents, Louisville's mayor has imposed a 9 p.m. curfew that is now extended through the weekend. This, as we have seen 120 straight days of protesting there in Louisville, much of it, I should add, very much peaceful. John and Jenna.
All right, thank you for your reporting, Eric. Coming up, why nearly 200 faith leaders are crossing the proverbial line between religion and politics and pointing American lawmakers to look beyond the border in the fight against COVID-19.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel. Now available at cbnradio.com.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
Prophecy thousands of years old.
We were called to be a light to the world.
Being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
By sharing their knowledge.
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
And their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
Welcome back. Tonight, Virginia's top political couple has tested positive for COVID-19. Governor Ralph Northam and the First Lady, Pam Northam, tested positive after receiving word that a staff member in the governor's Richmond residence had contracted the virus. According to a statement from his office, Northam is not experiencing any symptoms and will carry on his duties as governor. Northam's wife is said to have mild symptoms.
Well, as the COVID-19 pandemic wears on, countries across the world are still confronting other major pandemics like AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. And now a group of nearly 200 faith leaders is trying to highlight that point. One study found COVID-19 could result in a 10% increase in death from HIV, 20% in TB, and 36% in malaria. These faith leaders are urging Congress to maintain funding for the Global Fund targeting these diseases.
Well, joining us now is one of these faith leaders, Dan Hasseltine, singer with the Christian group Jars of Clay. Dan, it's great to see you. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, Dan, you're one of the nearly 200 faith leaders that signed this letter to Congress. Can you tell me why it's so important for the United States to keep the pedal to the metal in dealing with epidemics around the world like HIV, AIDS, malaria, and TB, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, certainly. I think we all know that we're part of a greater community. And so we know that if we don't eradicate disease or fight disease in other communities across the globe, it does come back around and it does end up back on our soil. And so even simply as a means of looking at COVID and going, all right, how can we prevent this from coming back into the U.S. with greater force? It's important to care about the global community.
Is there a danger that COVID-19 funding could take the place of funding for some of these other diseases?
No, and not necessarily, because I think we're dealing with the COVID, which is actually exacerbating a lot of the other diseases. And so when we deal with COVID, we're also dealing with those other things. And we're not actually asking for more funding necessarily. We're just asking for an international response to what's going on with COVID, because we're seeing things like HIV is on the rise so much so that we're seeing some communities are having mortality rates that are increasing close to 1,000%. Communities that had all but eradicated these other diseases are seeing them coming back because people are afraid to get treatment at medical clinics. They're afraid to go and get treatment for things like malaria. And so really when we're fighting COVID, we're actually also fighting these other diseases.
Yeah, Dan, I'm just curious, are you in touch with any of these lawmakers on the Hill? You know, what's kind of the latest with negotiations in terms of this global fund?
You know, the global fund is something that always seems to be on the chopping block. I think we are constantly having to remind our leaders on the Hill that the international community matters, and that where the U.S. really gets to lead is in the space of being compassionate and helping out with the response to global pandemics.
Dan, finally, can you highlight the global progress against these epidemics that's been made?
A lot of the progress for HIV and AIDS has been significant because we also see that that treatment for these diseases is also prevention. We started talking about the very end of HIV, the end of AIDS, just a few years ago, to say we can actually eradicate these diseases. We can actually combat these in a way that we don't see them spreading anymore. And what's at risk right now is that if we take our foot off the gas, if we start to say that, well, let's not fund these things, we will see them come back. Yeah.
All right, Dan Hasseltine, thank you. We're out of time and appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Dan. And when we come back, the return hits the National Mall. More on the Day of Prayer hitting the National Mall this weekend.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com to get your copy today.
Well, it's finally here, a highly anticipated national and global call to prayer underway in Washington tonight for evening worship and a march and an all-day prayer assembly on the National Mall tomorrow.
It's called The Return, and as Paul Strand reports, it's intended to be a serious day before the Lord, with organizers saying the fate of the nation hangs in the balance.
Prophetic author Jonathan Cahn and Pastor Kevin Jessup have organized The Return. It's presented as a globe-spanning, 12-hour opportunity for God's people to get serious about returning to Him and pulling their nation from a dangerous ledge.
The biblical template concerning judgment is that the nation, so warned, is given a space of time to return or to head for judgment and calamity.
We're in a real Nineveh moment. It's a critical situation in the nation. And much like Jonah went into Nineveh and said, you have 40 days and then it's all over. Listen, we are at that juncture right now in America. We have 40 days and all we know could be over. And so we need God to hear the cries of the righteous remnant.
Pastor Jessup tells CBN this gathering is not intended as a spectator event.
This is not a presentation, a concert, or glorified prayer meeting. This is a sacred, solemn assembly, as per Joel 2, where we come, the church comes, and we bow before holy God in reverent fear.
Joel 2 says, blow the trumpet in Zion, declare a holy fast, call a sacred assembly. And then, let the priests who minister before the Lord weep. Let them say, spare your people, O Lord. And if God's people will do that, He'll so turn things around that Joel says He'll be able to declare, be not afraid, O land, be glad and rejoice. Surely the Lord has done great things. Jessup says it's a moment for believers to repent, and as the book of Revelation states, return to their first love.
This is a critical Kairos moment, and if we miss it, I don't think we'll have another one.
If you can make it in person, Jessup says there's plenty of room, and if not, many ways to join in where you are.
We have nearly 30,000 churches across America that are simulcasting this event. This will be, I'm being told, the largest ever in Christendom broadcast simulcast.
Paul Strand, CBN News.
And you can watch the return live on CBN News. Tune in tonight from 6 to 9 p.m. and tomorrow from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. on the CBN News Channel, cbnnews.com, and all of our digital platforms.
Coming up next on Faith Nation, a once-in-a-blue-moon opportunity to connect with millions across the globe.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
Escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
Plan to join him.
And Amber Strong.
Or impeachment grows a little bit louder.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
We get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religion he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
Finally tonight, NASA continues to shoot for the moon in space exploration, and Saturday night, the space agency is inviting everyone across the globe to join them looking up into the sky.
Yeah, it's called International Observe the Moon Night, and it happens once a year when the moon is around its first quarter and you can really see its landscape, the craters, the mountains, all of that. The moon will be half illuminated, so again, its craters and mountains will be easy to spot on the night sky from every continent. In a time of social distancing, NASA wants to inspire the same unity and excitement the world shared when humans walked on the moon for the first time 50 years ago.
Jenna,
that should be just spectacular. John, you gonna go out and see it?
I was just gonna ask you, are you gonna do any moon gazing this weekend?
Yeah, you know, it's a good COVID activity.
Yeah, COVID safe,
yeah.
Social distancing, I think it could work.
All right, everybody. Well, that does it for Faith Nation this evening.
Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.